In the wild, animals usually keep their distance from humans out of fear. So when a tigress approached a lone man, he could never have anticipated the unbelievable request she had for him. The wilderness had always been a magical place, one that Joseph deeply loved to explore. Joseph was born and raised in a small rural village in Russia, surrounded by a magnificent forest. Throughout his childhood, his father often took him into the forest to hunt, track, and appreciate the beauty of nature. As Joseph grew older, he became a hunter, knowing the forest like the back of his hand and understanding how to survive while getting the best game. Little did he know, his love for the wild would lead him to a life-changing encounter. It started like any other day for Joseph. He woke up with the rising sun and headed into the forest to start his hunt. A few customers had requested some meat, and he was running low himself. Joseph entered the forest, hoping for a good haul. The morning sun cast an ethereal glow on the forest, a sight that never ceased to amaze him. By midday, Joseph decided to take a break for lunch. He had already hunted a few birds and planned to cook one for his meal. Though he was in an unfamiliar part of the forest, he wasn't worried. He could always follow his tracks back to the village. Ahead, he saw a clearing bathed in light, an ideal spot to rest. But as Joseph stepped into the clearing, he never expected what awaited him. Standing there in the middle of the clearing was a tiger. Joseph froze in fear. The tigress had clearly heard him coming and was staring directly at him as he emerged from the trees. Yet, despite catching him off guard, she didn't seem aggressive. In fact, she seemed calm. Seizing the moment, Joseph quickly raised his gun, aiming at the majestic beast. But the tigress didn't flinch, she just stared back at him. Confused by her behavior and unwilling to shoot if she posed no threat, Joseph slowly lowered his gun and cautiously moved closer. As he approached, the tigress took a few steps back, growling softly in warning. He then noticed she was a mother. Her teats were full of milk, indicating cubs nearby. More concerning was her limp. Joseph's heart ached at the sight. He softly called out to her, hoping to soothe her as he drew nearer. This seemed to calm the tigress, and she stopped growling, allowing him to come within a few feet. Up close, Joseph could see the wound was worse than he thought. Someone had tried to shoot her, and the bullet had lodged in her back leg, causing a severe infection. Seeing the state of her wound, Joseph wanted to help, but each time he tried to get closer, the tigress's growls kept him at bay. Then, something truly extraordinary happened. The tigress turned and started to walk away toward the edge of the clearing, but stopped just as she reached the trees. Joseph then heard tiny, soft mewls and growls. It was her cubs. The tigress gently picked up one of her babies from the ground and limped back toward Joseph. Once she reached him, she gently set the cub down at his feet. She then went back to retrieve a second cub and placed it next to the first. Joseph was both confused and astonished. He didn't know what the tigress wanted him to do with her cubs, and he was afraid to touch them, unsure of how she might react. Then the tigress began to walk away, leaving her babies with Joseph. Shocked, he tried to call her back, but she merely looked at him one last time before disappearing into the woods. Stunned, Joseph stood there, trying to process what had happened. He knew the tigress wouldn't leave her cubs unless she had no other choice. It struck him that she might have realized her time was running out and wanted to ensure her cubs' survival. Not wanting to leave the two young tigers to fend for themselves, Joseph gently scooped them up and made his way out of the forest and back to his home. Once safely back in the village, Joseph took the two tiger cubs to the local vet. He wanted to ensure they were healthy so he could raise them properly. The vet gave them a clean bill of health and instructed Joseph on their care, including what and how often to feed them as they grew. Grateful for the guidance, Joseph took the cubs home and followed the vet's advice meticulously. As time passed, the cubs, whom Joseph named Sasha and Alexei, grew larger and stronger. Word of the young tigers eventually reached officials from a nearby city zoo. They offered Joseph a substantial sum to buy the cubs for their exhibit. Despite the tempting offer, Joseph refused. He couldn't betray the trust the mama tigress had placed in him by leaving her cubs in his care. Eventually, the time came for Sasha and Alexei to return to the wild. They had grown into beautiful young adults, equipped with the skills they needed to survive. Though it saddened Joseph to see them go, he knew it was for the best. The forest was their true home. A couple of years later, Joseph found himself wandering through the forest, hunting for game, when he felt a sudden urge to revisit the clearing where he had first encountered the tigress and her cubs. He harbored a faint hope that Sasha and Alexei might somehow be in the area. As he reached the clearing, he noticed it hadn't changed much, though there were several odd holes in the ground. He thought little of it and decided to set up camp for the night, planning to return home the next day. As he sat by his campfire, Joseph saw a massive grizzly bear emerging from the woods into the clearing. The bear spotted him immediately and charged. Joseph realized with horror that his gun was in his tent. With no other option, he sprang to his feet and sprinted into the woods, the grizzly hot on his heels. The bear quickly gained on him, and it seemed like Joseph's fate was sealed. But just as the bear was about to catch him, two orange and black blurs shot out from the trees, placing themselves between Joseph and the bear. As Joseph started to calm down, he realized that the two blurs were actually Sasha and Alexei. The adult tigers ensured Joseph was safely behind them as they fought off the angry grizzly. Eventually the bear grew tired and walked away. Joseph was amazed that the animals he had raised had come to his rescue. After making sure he was okay, the tigers slipped back into the trees. Though Joseph knew he might never see them again, he was overjoyed to see Sasha and Alexei healthy and thriving in the wild where they belonged. Let me know your thoughts on this story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing videos.